Welcome to today's podcast episode. I am really excited about this guest episode. We were just talking beforehand, and I feel like we could probably talk for a long time. And you said we should record this, and we should have. Just talking about the next season in life and just how it is to be homeschooling just one teenager and just what all that looks like. So, Teresa, welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a delight to be here.
Can we start off? Share just with moms that are listening, just a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your story, and just about your family and where you're at now in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, a flyover is that I graduated homeschool mom now. I have 4 kids and I've done it for almost 2 decades. Once upon a time, I remember trying to get my arguments against homeschooling because it seemed like everyone was doing it. And actually, no, now everyone's doing it. But way back in the day, I picked up a book called The Homeschool Option by Lisa Rivera. Is Homeschooling Right for You? I think was the title. And I remember thinking, definitely not. I don't wear jean jumpers and I don't want my kids to be weird. Yes, I said that. And then over the course of the week, I read that book and was convinced we're homeschooling.
That is so awesome. That's so funny. I love that story. I feel like I should go find that book just to read it.
Great
just,
book. Highly recommended.
Yeah. I heard on a podcast that I was listening to about deschooling, and they were talking about whenever there's something new, the people that gravitate towards trying something that's just maybe a little off, that's not quite, they tend to be maybe, I don't want to say weird, but like, so those that gravitated towards homeschool, not that they were weird at all. I don't look at them as weird, but they were okay with just kind of marching to the beat of their own drum. Exactly. And so therefore that was kind of like the beginning. And so you think about any technology or anything, the iPhones. I remember my brother-in-law getting one. I was like, he's so weird. Why would he get that? And now like we all have these phones in our pockets and our hands and stuff. So I love that you were like, oh no, we're not homeschoolers. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. We are homeschoolers. And now you encourage moms in the homeschool space and have a podcast and a coaching business, a coaching option for moms, which is so good, so amazing. And all of your experience, I'm sure, is very helpful, and they love that. So you have created the 5 pillars of wellness for homeschool moms. I really want to do a deep dive, and can you tell us what each of those pillars are?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm homeschooling through many people's eyes now and experiencing it through so many different, whether it's different religions or worldviews or, just their educational focus, or there's so many possibilities. Everyone is not the same homeschooler. Everyone's different. But I feel like I'm homeschooling through so many other people's eyes in the last 6 years. And it's been a real privilege, but I've seen some common challenges that I thought were just my own. And I have discovered, no, in fact, they're very common amongst the homeschool community. I actually wrote a book. I don't know if I told you that, in my fruit orchard in 2018. And of all the things that I wrote on my website, I saw 5 separate pillars. And one of them was about wellness and self-care, us looking after ourselves. And when I speak to that, I'm not talking about the manicures, pedicures, stuff like that. Clearly not. But what I'm really talking about is mindset and the overall sense of, do I feel whole, connected to the people in my world, connected to myself, aware of my emotional atmosphere and how that's impacting, I'm not sure if you'd use this word, but the culture in your family, but also how your days go, and also how much you enjoy your homeschool. And also, is education really serving the child in front of you? All of those things they were the things that I wrote in my book. And then I discovered, as I'm coaching other women, they're the things that people are struggling with.
It's funny how we as homeschool moms can become so just kind of insulated, and we think that it's just us that has these struggles. And you just saying that you thought that this was just your struggle. And as you go through these, I'm sure that I am probably like, oh, that's me too. Oh, yeah. And the internet gets, it can be, it has its pros and cons, its ups and downs, and there's things that we like and don't like, but it can really help us to see that we're not struggling alone. We're not the only one that has walked this road. So
in fact, everybody has. And because I'm not back to back in coaching. I usually have a half an hour in between the sessions, but I so wish that we could just all come together and share our vulnerabilities with each other so that we know whatever you're feeling, whatever you're experiencing, everyone else is too in some form. Yeah.
Right. And if you are not experiencing it right then, you might be experiencing what someone else are experiencing maybe in the past, and you can be able to speak into them. And having homeschool mom friends is so important. And all it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you homeschool, like your style or what your focus is, what your vision. None of that stuff matters. You can still relate on a ground level of just the day in and the day out.
Yeah. Yeah. That is one of the reasons I love podcasting, is listening to other people's stories and learning how to connect with anyone. And I love that. This is something that is from my heart. I love connecting with other people. And I wish all the women could come together just to see that their commonalities are universal.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. So if you're out there experiencing something, you're not alone, and be open and talk to. I feel like sometimes we have to take the first step.
Yeah.
And we have to be the one to say, hey, to a friend, I'm really struggling. I'm having problems with anger. I'm having problems with patience. I'm just tired, or I'm just having, how do I balance the day? How do I get the things done? And just be vulnerable with each other. And what's the worst that can happen is a mom's like, oh, I can't relate. Well, that's all right. And you find another mom, find somebody else and you'll be able to find somebody. Yeah. So can you go in a little bit of depth of your 5 pillars and how you see that playing out in moms' lives?
Yeah. So typically I will hear people come to me and ask me how do I make this thing happen happily in my home, or my kids are fighting, or I have a child that really is resistant, or something that sounds like the focus of the challenge is on homeschooling. But it's not usually about homeschooling. It could be any possibilities. It could be that they're not really homeschooling to the child in front of them. They are homeschooling a method, or they're like bought into resources or a certain co-op or a way of doing education. And it's irrelevant to me how people do their homeschool. I ask, is it working for you? Is it working for the child in front of you? And this is the discussion where I think we have a lot of overlap, because in my experience, we come into homeschooling with our own version of what an education should be. And if any of us, and most of us have, been exposed to the conventional system, we tend to think, well, that's what an education is. So we need to bring that into our home, and we're doing it unconsciously. And then we try to make the thing happen. Or maybe we missed out on something as a child and we go, oh, you know what we should do? We should do these cool things. Except we're not actually looking at the child in front of us, asking, does it serve the person that is being raised in our home? And I think we can release a lot of frustration when we lean in to child-inspired learning, or it doesn't matter to me what words we use, if we lean in to self-directed education, or if we just look at the child and go, should I be teaching you an hour of math concepts today when you would gladly just not do any of this at all? So first pillar is about deschooling and leaning into child-inspired learning. The other thing is obviously managing our emotions, emotional regulation, understanding our emotional landscape. When we get to know ourselves well, when we build a relationship with ourselves, being kind and compassionate and saying, okay, what are your stories before you even parented that are influencing the relationship that you're having with your kids, but also how you're experiencing, you were referring to frustration or overwhelm, or I think anger, all of those things, or many other emotions. We need to know how we relate to them, and we need to know why we're reacting in certain circumstances, and then really build a self-compassionate approach to ourselves so that we can grow ourselves. And there is no other pillar, I think, that doesn't resonate more widely with everyone, because we all have different emotional landscapes, but we all have something that we repeatedly are frustrated or overwhelmed by, and we need to figure out how to address it. Homeschooling invites us to grow in those areas. The other thing is really about setting aside a time away to either build into your personal growth or your interests, or maybe you're building a part-time business, or doing something that is for you, about you, that has nothing to do with your kids. And we were just talking about how previous, in the beginning of our homeschool journeys, we just had all these plans and ideas, and it was fun, and all the kids underfoot, and so much energy, and so many field trips, and so many things to do. And it was so exciting, and we thought it would be forever. And then one by one, each child graduates, grows up, and then you have bigger swaths of time to do things for you. And I have met a mom. I've met many moms, but I have one conversation with a mom on podcast or YouTube who I had a conversation with about her end of homeschool experience. And this is one I've heard on repeat now. But she was depressed, had a really hard time getting off the sofa when she unexpectedly put her youngest into school, and then spent the next couple years asking herself, like, what's the meaning of life? What's the point? Why am I here? I thought I was going to be a mom forever. I'm fully engaged in the homeschool mom experience. Even though it feels like this might not be a relevant point to everyone, there does come a time where they will graduate and move into the next stage of their lives. So it's an important consideration, and you can really help yourself by building in time away. Also for your big emotions, for emotional regulation, but also to build into you so that you have a sense of you after they're gone. And then, of course, relationships is another pillar. So the relationships we have with each other, whether, a lot of people don't feel supported in their homeschool choice. So the relationships that they have around their homeschool choice, but also the people that are in their homes, their family of origin or in the family of creation, those people have a giant impact on how we show up in our life and how connected and secure we feel. And that directly impacts how we're approaching our relationship with our kids and also our relationship with ourselves. Anyways, it's all intricate. Every single one of those things is like a cobweb all kind of tying together. So when a mom comes to me and says, I can't make homeschool work, I'm not usually thinking, which curriculum are you using? Because I'll help you find the right one. That's not what I do.
I think that is so usually lost. And like you're just saying there at the end, usually we just go to, this isn't working. I have to change the math curriculum.
Yeah.
But maybe it's the relationship. It could be a little bit of the curriculum. Maybe you need to do some research. As you were saying, are you homeschooling to the child in front of you? You might be doing something that just is not working for them. It might be an online math curriculum, and that's just not how they need manipulatives. They need things. They need to be moving things and counting instead of just looking at some 3D kind of objects that don't look 3D to them on a computer screen. That is, I love that. I wrote that down. I'm like taking some notes as you're talking here, and just, am I homeschooling to the child in front of me? And I think when we sometimes get into homeschooling, especially in our first couple of years, like you were saying, we take our preconceived notions of what education and learning comes from. And typically that is from our own school time. And so we think that's, and I did that. I did exactly that. I had the posters, I had the timetable, I had all of the things. Sometimes we have to try them and then find out that does not work. And so I don't think that time is lost on me because not all of it lasted very long. Like the time thing lasted a couple hours, and I was like, we can't do this. This isn't
just a couple hours. It took me like 2 or 3 years to get out. It really did. I hit a wall by I don't know, maybe it was 3 or 4 even, where I'm like, this isn't going to work, and I don't enjoy this anymore.
Yeah, and there was probably things that took me 3 to 4 years to figure out, but I figured out the time thing pretty quick, and then other stuff not as quick. But yeah, the deschooling is so important. As I mentioned, I was listening to a podcast all about it and just changing my mindset, and it all comes down to the mom, as you're saying. I mean, the old saying, I don't know if this really quite applies. I don't know how I feel about it, but if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy kind of thing. But we all understand what that means. And when mom is thriving and feeling fulfilled and loving her role as a homeschool mom, and also having that time, doing something outside of the homeschool and the motherhood, then things fall into place. Did you see that in your own life too?
Yeah. I have so many, just like when people ask, how was your homeschool, or what did you do in your homeschool? I go into like a mind fog, because I'm like, at what point with which child, there's so many different iterations. And the same thing with my growth journey. So because I'm trying to connect with people online so they know what I'm doing, then I'm pulling stories from my life to go, okay, here was a point where I began to learn whatever pillar I'm speaking to. But I don't think it was actually really quite as cut and dry. I was overlapping learning all the time. I feel like I still am. I feel like I'm still deschooling. I really do. And all the ideas of education, I mean, okay, we could just create one episode just on what is an education anyways, and what's the point of it. And because I started with Latin and I did a classical homeschool, I did learn that the root word of education is educato, which I've understood means to raise up. And so when I look at that word, to raise up, then I ask myself, well, what am I raising up? Am I raising up a school curriculum, or am I, is it a routine, or is it a child in front of me? And so who is the child, and how can I help best serve them today, and then tomorrow, and then 6 months from now, and whatever. So yeah. Yeah, I could go on for that a long time with that one.
Yes, please. No, that's so good. And how you're saying you're still deschooling and you're still looking at this differently. I am too. And just you and I with our final homeschooler. And I am homeschooling my last final one vastly different. I don't want to say vastly different, because then it makes it seem like I did her wrong, my oldest wrong.
No.
And I really did. I really started to kind of lean in then. And I think we just feel so scared for so many years that if we don't do X, we're not going to get to Y, and they're going to be messed up, and they're not going to be successful, and we're going to.
Whatever that means, because that even that one is like, what is success? What do you mean by that? What do you want for your child? Because, okay, when you say deschooling, I now realize that it's more about, for me anyways, what I see as deinstitutionalizing. Realizing that there's a lot of people in the world. And I know this is probably obvious to most of us, but I live rural, so my closest neighbors are the bald eagles, and that are just right up there. And so but I'm exposed to all these people, and I realize we all have unique purpose. And the answer is, I think, yes. And we need to really lean into, what is that purpose? Let us fully embrace the thing that we're supposed to be doing here. When we do that, when we think like that, we change how we approach our child's education, and it can take many iterations. And because I've lost my train of thought, I will just let you take the.
No, that's good. Can you share a little bit of stories, if you have any from your own life or from others that you've worked with, about how implementing these pillars has made an impact upon them and their homeschool, on their own life, and then also it carries out to their family and their homeschool?
The one thing I want to share, there is this one mom, this is a concept that we haven't discussed, and it's not one that I hear discussed in homeschooling in general. And it actually ties with the thing that I lost my train of thought in. It's boredom, that homeschool moms get bored, and that's okay. Because anybody that's been doing something for 2 decades gets bored with what they're doing. And then I would say, okay, what do you want to really do right now? Because I don't think you're going to serve your child by just continuing to force through, even though you don't really want to be doing this anymore, or you're thinking about doing something else. And so I think there's value in having the conversation. Okay, so why are you homeschooling this year? And what is it you might be feeling called toward? And I bring that up. There's one particular homeschool mom who, in the last number of months, who has 4 kids, and she has also a son at the very end. But anyways, who became like a singleton, is what it feels like when you have that many kids homeschooling together, and then they keep launching and growing up. But she was feeling bored. And, by the time we finished having conversations, she felt like, okay, I don't have to do homeschool the way that I did it. And I thought I had to do it in a certain way, because this is what I had idealized. This is the right way. Of course, it's individual even there. We determine that the way we're doing it is the right way. But then as time goes by, you realize, I don't want to do it the same way. In fact, and also, we get clearer on how we engage our kids. I don't know what your experience is, but I wouldn't say I did things wrong with one child versus the other, but I became so much more confident and so much more clear on looking at the child in front of me, especially my youngest, and going, you know what? Why would I do that when he's like math related things? He is such a natural with that stuff. So I would not focus it the same way I did with every other child. And I felt more ease in that with him. So anyways, I saw that with this mom too, that she leaned into you know what, it's okay that I'm going to move into a very different direction with this youngest guy, and not just homeschool differently, but also start doing things that I want to do outside of homeschooling entirely.
That's a very inspiring story, because I think we don't always, especially if you're homeschooling and you're in the first couple of years and you're just deep in the trenches, and sometimes you're still on that high of homeschooling, but there does come that time where you just kind of are bored of just doing the same thing, or bored of just doing the curriculum and not seeing education so much bigger. I like how you use the word deinstitutionalizing. Did I use the right word? Ourselves, and thinking about education so so much differently. Yeah. Do you have any other stories from your life or from other homeschool moms that?
Yeah, I mean, the one that I resonate with most is really the overwhelm. So that's actually what I wrote in the beginning most about is overwhelm. And for me, I was very much trying to, in the first 3 or 4 years, create a well-trained mind, private school, classical homeschooling approach, 3 read alouds in the day. I had activities from 8 till about 4 or 5, and then we still did a read aloud in the evening. Like I was full on, and I loved my education. I don't think it was necessary for every one of my kids, but what I saw with one particular moment that I had, I remember it was before read alouds in the morning, before we had our morning basket out. And I don't remember what was going on, but I can imagine any one of these things that I either had, there was bickering amongst the kids, or, they didn't want to sit still. They wanted to go do something else. Or maybe I had an argument with someone, or maybe, I just all the possible things that could happen as a mom. It seemed to all come together on the same day. And I remember yelling, and I remember leaving the room and them all looking at me like, okay, are we doing homeschool? And then going into the other room, trying to contact my husband, who is an emerge physician. And so I tried calling him. He wasn't available. He usually is for me, even in those moments, but he wasn't there. And so I called my friend, and she, not even a homeschool mom, but a supportive person. I realized that I'm not taking care of me, not doing anything for me. I don't think I even know me. I'm just doing the things that I think I'm supposed to be doing. And that was a really big catalyst moment for me, where I could see, for a flash, I could see the bigger picture. This wasn't just about homeschooling. I didn't have a strong sense of boundaries or a strong sense of who I am versus who other people are. So I didn't feel supported, but I also was overextending myself. Obviously I was schooling at home and was self-defeating in that way. There were so many different things that could have been represented in that moment, but it was a very big moment for me. So that would be one of the biggest catalyst moments for me.
And did you notice a big shift at that time, or was it a slow change? Was there like sliding back? Was there moving forward then, or how did that look?
There was no absolute here. That was just like one really big moment. Like there's so many different transformation moments that I've had, but, are getting a sense of who I am, what I needed, what I wanted outside of the mom role. I don't think I could have put words to that like that at that time, but I wrote about all this stuff, which I think is so powerful. And once upon a time, I'd say, you know what, journaling is a good idea. Maybe you should consider it. And some moms would say, yeah, absolutely. And other ones would be like, I don't know. And now I'm like, how do I convert you to journaling? But getting your thoughts on paper and get clear about whatever the challenge is in front of you, that is step number 1. And that has been a powerful therapist in itself for me. So I would say there's many iterations of transformation.
Yeah, and I guess maybe you can't always see it at the time. You look back, hindsight is 20/20, right? And you can see how things started to progress. And I completely resonate with that. I'm sure I had those moments of my own, of just flipping out, of taking things way too seriously or way too to the point that it does not need to be, and the kids and walking out, knowing that the best thing at that time was for me to walk out of the room, and then them looking at each other like, your kid's probably like, so are we going to do this, or what, or are we free for the day? Is she letting us off the hook and we can go run around and play outside, or what? And
well, I'll tell you that is one story. I think I've had a few of those stories. So I'm pinpointing one moment in time where I did actually have a moment of awareness of me not meeting my needs or not knowing that I existed. Because that's not just a homeschool mom thing. I think that's a mother thing, that we tend to focus in on our kids and look at them as a mirror to our souls. Like, how do we nurture you? But really we're nurturing ourselves, or we're trying to do something for ourselves and not always seeing the child in front of us. But anyways, I could keep going.
Yeah. No, me too. And I've seen that there are some certain things that help me to be the best wife and mom and friend and daughter, and go on and on. But just speaking specifically just to, the core family that we are homeschooling, that I can be the best wife and mom when I fill myself up with a couple of things. And to me, faith is important. So taking some time to read the Bible, having devotions, exercising, moving my body, making that a priority, because I feel better. I sleep better.
Yeah. Eating
well, fueling myself up well, and not skipping out on meals or anything like that. And, just taking that time, and then having all this podcast stuff. This is
Yeah.
been such a blessing for me and so fun. I think it's also good for the kids to see. I'm not saying everybody has to start a podcast or anything, but to see moms doing other things. And just, so let's just go back to the exercising or the reading of your Bible or the eating well. You can teach your kids how to do that too. And they're like, oh, mom, and you can connect, especially as you get to like tweens and teens.
Yeah.
You can connect on that level and go for a jog together, and you can do things together that they're like, oh, look, mom's actually a person. She's cool. And
that's right.
Yeah.
And I have interests outside of other people. Like, because I've written for so long, I can see the trends where I focused. And there's no question, we were doing fine art study because I like it. And I got a lot of posts on my website about fine art. Yeah. You should too. You should enjoy it when they see you light up. Like, there's often this discussion around lifelong love of learning. I want my children to have a lifelong love of learning. And I'm like, I don't think it's necessary for us to focus on that. I know that's kind of a countercultural statement in the homeschool realm, but I think we need to get out of our kids' way so that they will learn, or that they want to live their life intentionally and learn. Because I think we're constitutionally, compelled to learn because we're human. And as an adult, like you and I, over the last number of years, podcasting, like, that's not at all what I thought I'd be doing. It's not all the back end work, the tech work. Don't think I wanted to do all that stuff, but I learned it because I wanted to learn how to connect and communicate with other people. So we're always learning, lifelong love of learning, because we want to fully live our lives intentionally.
I like how you said, get out of our kids' way. And same with us, so for you, learning everything you needed to learn in order to podcast and to get your website and to blog and to write a book, you wanted to learn that, and nobody got in your way, and you went and did it. And so the same thing can be for our kids. Just kind of get out of their way, and also tie in those things that we're interested in. I remember tying in doing certain subjects or reading certain books during our morning time because I wanted to read them. And I also wanted them to be a part of reading that, and we could do it together and have conversations. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I still love it. Like, when my girls are home and they're like, okay, I've been thinking about reading this. I'm like, really? You've been wanting to read something? Let's read together. And they're in their 20s, and I'm still, and I can't get rid of all the homeschool books because I'm like, hopefully somebody will, grant me a grandchild, and I will happily read to them. But I will not homeschool again. Other people have asked, will you homeschool their kids? I'm like, oh, no, we're going too far. I will for 3 weeks in the Bahamas if you need me, and we will enjoy our vacation together. Then I'm all on.
Motherhood is an amazing journey. So thank you for being here today, Teresa. Where can the listener, you mentioned a book, podcast, all the things, where can we send them to?
Yeah. Well, my very favorite thing to do is to actually meet people. So if you're interested in connecting with me, you can find a booking link, but really my entire podcast, all the things I speak to, on my website, capturingthecharmedlife.com, which is what my intention was right from the beginning, is to capture the charmed life. And then I realized there were a couple challenges along the way, but I do think we can transform those challenges into our charms. So that's where people can find me, and I look forward to meeting them.
Wonderful. I will drop that link in the show notes. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes, and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.